Hey, this Realm of the Mist podcast is brought to you proudly by the Nurses Guild.
Hi, this is Eddie Deason. You're listening to Breaking the Fourth Wall. I was Mandark in Dexter's Laboratory. Ha 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 ha.
Hey, what's up, guys? Christopher Stolle back for another Breaking the Fourth Wall, and this time I'm sitting down with stand-up comedian and podcast hoster, Mr. Jeff Dwoskin. I said it right, did I?
You did, Chris Stolle.
That's why I asked before. Jeff, how you doing?
Good. How are you? So glad to be here.
All right. Good. Well, look, the way I usually do interviews on this, I don't do the cold question, call and answer that a lot of people do on interview shows. I have a couple bullet points. And the first bullet point, knowing that you're a stand-up comedian, I've got to ask, and I'll present it to you this way. I can be a funny guy, personally. I could tell jokes in like a bar and get a couple people to chuckle. But what is it that makes a stand-up comedian stand out where they could be in a room up on stage and be able to connect with a whole audience in such a comedic way?
Great question. I'll take it in 5 parts. No, I'm just kidding. All right. No, 95% of it's confidence. And then the other part of it is you have to be able to create the whole story and context with your words because you're standing in front of strangers. So you can be the funniest person in the world when you're with your friends, right? You'll say something, you'll go, Penny, and everyone knows you're talking about Penny from high school and that one thing at the party, the pool, because someone just splashed, so all the context is there and you can just trigger it with one word, right? Because you all have this shared background. When you're on stage in front of 100,000 whatever people, these are all strangers to you, right? So all you have is these common elements, life that you're sharing, but you have to then kind of set it up, when the setup of the joke or the premise or how you're talking about it needs to be in the context where you're bringing everyone into your world, so that when you're making a joke, everyone can be a part of it,
right?
And then that's what they call them, callbacks during a show, where you refer something back to something you said earlier in the show. And that's sort of building on that concept, though, within that moment of time. At the end, you reference a joke you made in the beginning, or somebody, Chris, you talk to me and we have some kind of interaction, and then later on the show, I reference it, then everyone laughs because that's now a shared connection that we all have.
Oh, I'm used to people laughing at me. Go ahead, use me in your show. What made you want to go the stand-up comedy route? Like, was there a particular comedian that inspired you, or was it something like you were kind of the class clown or constantly annoying your grandmother or something that led you down saying, hey, I want to do stand-up?
I was not a class clown. I was actually quite quiet in school, very shy, actually. But at work, I was funny. And I would get up in front of, we'd have the whole company meetings, and I'd be very funny. And I would just present. It was just a natural thing that I could do and kind of make fun of things without crossing lines. And it was, funny. And then one of my earlier entrepreneurial efforts in the late 90s was I started one of the very first web development companies in Michigan. So not to age myself, so one of the people that I did a website for was Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle, which was a big comedy show place here in Michigan, but also as far as the whole Midwest goes. And they had comedy classes. So I knew these things existed. So when people were like, oh, you're funny. And so I said, oh, I guess I could do this. And so I went and I took this writing class at the Comedy Castle. And I'm sure anyone listening, their comedy clubs have something similar in the area. And they kind of just taught you how to write for the stage. And then you got on stage and you practiced being on stage. And at the end, you did 7 minutes, you know, a routine. Everyone did 7 minutes. And I just never looked back. I just never stopped doing it. I just kept going and going and going. So.
Well, before I ask what your first experience on stage was, you had mentioned you had helped founded a company. Would that happen to be the hashtag Roundup?
I did found that company as well. That was later. That was kind of building on my obsession with Twitter.
Yeah.
In the late 90s, I was a web developer. So, you know, we were kind of building web pages for tons of different companies in the area. And we were acquired and we were part of this IPO, and it was fun. It was a good ride. And then if anyone familiar with technology history, then there was a .com bust and everything went to hell. But for a while, it was a good time. And so later, when I got obsessed with Twitter and these things called hashtag games, which are like hashtag events, which the hashtag itself sets up a premise. You know, hashtag found in the secondhand store, you know, or
right.
Hashtag marriage in 3 words, something where you read it and you know how to react to it. You know, this is something I can add to. And so I sort of became obsessed with that, and I built an app. And so if you download the hashtag Roundup app, or you follow us on Twitter at hashtag Roundup, then every like hour or so, there's a brand new hashtag. And I don't mean like Monday motivation. I mean, these are like original hashtags that are fun, you know, all different kinds of topics. If you don't like one, you just wait an hour.
Rant. that was one we were using for a while.
Yeah,
people didn't understand what it was. That's why it never took off. But yeah, hashtag ramble rant. It was mostly because most of us could sit down and just bullshit for hours on end about absolutely nothing. So, all right, great. Well, again, I guess before I go to the first experience on stage, I'm curious about this obsession with Twitter. You kind of have my curiosity, because I'll be honest with you. I you know, because of the podcasting and everything else, I deal with the social medias like everybody else. But outside of like Facebook, I hate interacting on Instagram, interacting on Twitter. I don't get the appeal. So I'm curious, what's got you obsessed with Twitter?
So I used to be obsessed with Facebook like you. I was once just like you.
Actually, the only one I was ever obsessed with MySpace, and I'd love to go back to
it. I got a funny MySpace story. So there was a so on MySpace, you know, you had your top 8, right? And like when you had MySpace, I feel like you were always obsessed. Like anyone you bumped into, you would rush to MySpace and see if they talked about you. Like, hey, I just saw Jeff, you know, that kind of. Anyway, so in the comedy world, there was this guy, and I'm totally blanking on his name right now, but he got arrested for soliciting a 14-year-old for sex. And so he was like top news in Michigan, at least. He was, you know, big news in Michigan. And then when they showed his MySpace page, I was in his top 8.
Oh no. That's one of those hide.
Yeah, that was that. No, I'm not the most proud of that story, but it is an actual story. So wait, what was the other? Obsession. So I was obsessed with Facebook, you know, and I would post, and then your friends would be like, oh, you're funny. You know, you bump into them at a restaurant. Oh, I love reading your stuff. You're so funny. And then, but they wouldn't like it. You know what I mean? I have a real problem with, anyway, so, you know, but they were reading it, but not engaging with it. And there's no rush from that. You know what I mean? Me bumping into you randomly at Kroger, so you can tell me you liked a post from 3 weeks ago, isn't doing it, you know. But so I bumped into a friend of mine, and he was really into Twitter. And he's like, Jeff, you should go on Twitter, because on Twitter, more people can see you. On Facebook, you're just talking to your friends and family. There's no scope. It's not any broader than that. And so I started going on Twitter, and so I would tweet and tweet and tweet. And I started getting picked up in like publications. My friend was once in Times Square, and my tweet was in Times Square, you know, just on one of the news things. And he's like, and I've been right on Good Morning America, and news broadcast, you know, just all these things, because I would tweet into conversations and stuff like that. And so,
Just
so
jokes or
Twitter
correct?
itself has a much broader reach than Facebook. And Facebook to me, like, especially with the podcasting, and when I started the Jeff Dwoskin show, my podcast, that was pretty good, right? I just slipped that in. And, but I'm sure, I can post on Facebook, not to talk about politics or anything, but I can post, wear a mask, right? And I'll get 100 likes, 100 likes. Okay. If I post, here's my episode of the newest episode of the Jeff Dwoskin show, which obviously is my show because I put my name on it to make it perfectly clear. And it's not like I'm doing it for an organization. This is me. I've done, in the subcontext of me putting that out there is, hey, this is something very special to me, and I'm now sharing it with you. And I get 0 likes, like nothing. It's like, I don't know if you guys get the same thing, like, but it's just like,
all the time.
And so it's so frustrating. So it's like Twitter to me is just, it's much, I don't know, it's just much freer. You can get noticed by more people. And I've actually, the bunch of guests I've gotten, I've just, picked up as followers over the years, so I reach out to them, on Twitter and stuff like that. Hey, they don't always say yes, but sometimes they do. And, so when I was writing for the HuffPost and stuff like that, I got verified on Twitter. So I got the blue check mark. So that's one of the reasons I still like it. I like Instagram. I want to figure it out. I post on there. I'm getting better at Instagram. Stories, I think, is key versus posting on Facebook. Also, I think more people look at that than the other stuff.
Might be right.
But
so
yeah,
when you were interacting and first building your fan base on Twitter, what were you posting or replying to? Were you just doing random jokes, or were you just getting involved in other conversations just to get, known by other people because you were interacting with other topics of conversation?
I would post jokes. I'd try and be funny. I'm too focused right now on the hashtags. I should do both and just be tweeting normal stuff too. But back then I would just tweet and try and be funny. And, I just got a couple of people's attentions. And then I realized, it's about retweeting other people. People get, especially comics, really caught up on their timeline being just them because they think it has to be just them. But few people go to actually your page, Most people see it in the feed or when someone else shares it. So the best way to gain momentum is to share and retweet other people. The mistake that most people make when they get on like Twitter specifically is they think, oh, I should just be doing just as good as him, or somebody else who's put in the time for months and months and months and months. If you look back at my tweets from 2012, they probably all have 0 likes and 0 retweets. So some hit big, some don't. But it's nobody owes you anything, and most of the time the people that complain, they're not sharing anyone's stuff. There's certain patterns, and then people can get real negative and stuff like that.
See, part of the reason I avoid Twitter is because like I'll share the podcast obviously on Twitter, but I don't really socially interact because all the people that I follow, for example, like Mark Hamill, Ron Perlman, stuff like that, actors, actresses, musicians, whatever. If it's not political, it's porn. That's all I see on Twitter. It's either fuck Trump or somebody's getting fucked. That's all it is. So, that's why I rarely use Twitter except for promotion of the network here, and kind of just, sit in my little Facebook corner.
I haven't seen the porn as much as you, so maybe I'm following the wrong people. But but it is. In all fairness to your other comment, though, it is heavily political now. It's impossible not to be, or for it not to be. Twitter so embraces Donald Trump's tweets and just all these things. So it's gotten out of hand. Between that and K-pop, sometimes there's just nothing, you can get lost.
Well, K-pop could be considered ear porn.
I just mean like,
Not
just
good porn, just ear porn. So anyway, back to the comedy. Your first ever experience up on stage, did you already have a routine? Did you know the type of material you were going to use, or was it just kind of, for lack of a better term here, as my chair decides to pop on me?
The following is an important message from the Nurses Guild of Florida. We know COVID has many scared. Many of our seniors are even afraid to go to the doctors. Just the thought of being exposed to all the people in the waiting room, in addition to the doctor's staff, is a risk many don't want to take right now. However, putting off health care makes most conditions worse. The Nurses Guild has the solution. One that exposes you to just one person. Call your doctor's office and have them order a nursing assessment from the Nurses Guild. We are a 5-star Medicare home health agency. Your registered nurse in full PPE will perform a full head-to-toe assessment, vital signs and medication review, pulse oximetry, even an EKG if needed. Lab work and x-rays can also be done at home. Our registered nurse will discuss all of this strictly and directly with your doctor and get you results. All of our nurses and home health aides are fully screened, supervised, and COVID tested. Call the Nurses Guild today to arrange your home health visit at 954-596-9806 in Broward County and 561-826-8937 in Palm Beach County. Remember, healthcare put off is healthcare too late. Stay safe during the pandemic. Wear a mask and insist those around you wear a mask. Wash your hands frequently and stay home as much as possible.
For lack of a better term here, just throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what stuck.
Well, I took a writing class, and the goal of it was to get on stage. So you kind of work through the material. A lot of it was, I think I had a porn joke. I think I had a weight joke. There was different things, I think when you're starting out, you don't know exactly who you are. You're just trying to figure out how to be on stage. I think part of the evolution is recognizing how to get laughs, and then you can start to adjust quickly, your voice and which focus you want to do. I mean, I was working with this comedian, Mary Ellen Hooper, and she said to me, Jeff, you're the frustrated father. And then she lists off all these other jokes that I had, making fun of this sign and, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. She's like, just get rid of all of that. Just focus on family stuff. And so, so that, that helped. And then I got rid of all the generic stuff. And I think you'll hear people say, if you don't want people stealing your jokes, just talk about things that are so unique to you, or in a way so unique to you that, they can't steal it. I tell you, everyone talks about having babies and stuff, but, I think I have a birth routine. I think it's pretty unique to me, or at least, no one would have had that same thought, I'm pretty confident, stuff like that, so it's a matter of putting your own experiences into something, and then it becomes yours. That's why I named my show The Jeff Dwoskin Show, because you can name it something else. It originally was called something else. And then, someone can take a name similar to that. I went to, somebody shared me the name of their podcast today, and I went to search it, and 15 other podcasts with a similar name came up, and I couldn't even find this guy's podcast. I knew it was there because I found it a different way, but it's so even if you're the name of what you're doing is not unique, it's just, it's hard to find it.
He's talking about me, guys. No. Now, you bring up a great question, something I've always wondered with comedians, especially when they delve into their personal lives and for their comedy. Being the frustrated father and playing the role on stage of, the husband who complains about things the wife does or says, or, the daughter did that particular day. Have you ever found your routine to where you come home and your wife and daughter are standing there, arms crossed, really you had to tell that story? How often does it negatively affect your personal life?
Never. One, my kids have never seen it. Well, now they've seen some on YouTube once they discovered YouTube and stuff like that. But my wife just knows, because the reality is that's onstage Jeff, right? So it's a different version of the real world. So it's not me literally talking about my wife. It's a fictional version of my wife that's 70% my wife and 30% made to be entertaining for the audience as well. So any story that I have, you know, is rooted in truth, but then exaggerated so that it's entertaining and fun to hear. You know, so there's threads of it. And the negative part is like when my wife would come to a show and she'd be sitting with friends and my friends, and they hear it through a different lens than, you know, than my wife understands it to be, and they get uncomfortable sitting in front of her. You know, so sometimes like she would, if like friends would come to a show and she'd be at the show, she won't even sit with them. You know what I mean? So because there's different realities, and the people who don't know me at all are experiencing the reality I want them to experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the people who know me are hearing it, they're going to hear it differently no matter what, because they know me. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, we've had dinner together. You know, I was
on the opposite end of the coin, though, is there any particular topics of conversation that you do on, or that you would set up to do when you're writing your jokes and all that, and like your family would turn around and be like, no, you can't tell that story? Like, is there some areas where like the family's like, look, that one's private, you can't turn that into a joke? Yeah.
Well, no, because, you know, sometimes like scenarios, like one, I don't know that people would know. I would never translate. First of all, real life, I don't think translates 100% funny. So it has to be changed, I think.
Right.
You know, because real life is too long. Real life is boring. Real life has too many characters. You know what I mean? So it's like, you have to really tighten that narrative, you know? So it becomes like the basis of the story, but it's not really necessarily the story. And then a lot of times these things get meshed into other stories as well, or you kind of combine experiences into one story to make them a little more impactful. So there's never like that scenario, at least for me. I mean, other people might get up there and talk about, you know, like when you watch Ms. Maisel and you get the impression that, you know, oh, this is what I did today, and everyone's laughing. That's not gonna. No one could get up and just talk like that, and the whole audience is laughing the first time you said something like that. It just doesn't happen that way. But
All right. Well, moving on from the comedy here, as you've mentioned numerous times, you have your own podcast. What inspired you to want to turn around and step into this world of filth and disease?
I don't know. Well, you know, it's like, I tell you, it turned out to be a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. That I'll tell you. But so I was originally going to do it a few years ago, and then I got lazy. And I finally, when COVID hit, I decided, all right, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to do it. And, you know, originally it was a few years ago, it was a podcast. It was going to be about social media. A lot of the stuff we talked about earlier, I was just going to focus on tips and how to go viral. It was going to be called Viral Intentions. And it was a whole thing. I had the intro, the outro, everything ready to go. I bought all the equipment, sat on my desk for a good 2.5 years before my wife made me put it away because I never did it.
Get it off the dining room table.
I know, exactly. And then so like in, you know, March, I pull it all out, you know, because everyone now I'm at home, everyone's working from home. And it's like, oh my God, it might not be the best time to start a podcast called Viral Intentions, you know, so with the pandemic. So, you know, I changed it to the Jeff Dwoskin show, redid the beginning, redid the end, kind of changed it, made it more about probably the reason that I hadn't been doing it was I probably just wasn't as passionate about that particular topic as I thought I was. It's still a piece of it, social media and trends, comedy, that kind of stuff. It's all in there. So I just thought it was fun. I was going to be able to just talk to people. That's what I found like is the greatest thing is I'm able to reach back to people I haven't talked to in a very long time. And oh yeah, I'll be on your podcast. You know, you get to connect with them again for, you know, hour or so. And like, and then, you know, but then the whole producing of it and all that kind of stuff. And I do stuff in the beginning that's not the interview. And then I do stuff at the end and making sure everything sounds right. It's like, I'm very OCD when it comes to like, I don't like clicks. I know, sorry, I didn't put that in your show, but like but you know, they don't like those things. And then like people wear they don't use the right mic and they don't use headphones to get the reverb. And it like, I hate it. And like, or they'll hit their mic and like, it makes this noise. And then like, I find myself editing everything out.
I'm sorry. No, they're counting like, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. I always try to tell people when they're getting into podcasting, they're like, oh, it's so simple, or, that they know I'm a podcaster. Oh, it's so simple. You just sit and talk to people. I'm like, you have no idea the work. Sitting and talking to somebody for a half an hour, that's the easy part. Yeah, the editing, the releasing, the promoting, the sharing it out. That's the real work.
Yeah, and I find like you have to like make it so it's it's one thing when you're watching something live. You
Mhm.
don't you if somebody hits a mic or whatever, you don't even notice it. It's just live. But like when you're listening to it and it's like, oh, this was audio meant for me to hear and something's wrong with it, it just that to me is just so much more noticeable. And so you have to like be a little more obsessive with it.
Right.
I'm getting better at it, trying to figure it out. But but that's where I kind of like I was editing an interview
Okay.
and I realized people take subtle deep breaths when they in between, and you can hear it like when you're wearing headphones, like they'll be going just real subtle though. That was a little exaggerated, and I took all those out and it cut 4 minutes out
Oh,
of the
wow,
thing.
really?
Okay. Yeah. And it was just like, so you can imagine like how much that weighs on people's ears. You want them to hear it. You want to get through it, so it's, yeah, but yeah, but it's fun. I mean, the other, I guess not negative thing is, but like, I think I have like 30 some interviews in the can, you know what I mean? I only do one a week, I didn't realize it was so everyone, just doing it. And like, you can't be like, hey, can I interview you in 2 months? Because something's going to happen. You got to get people in, and, if you can get them in, right? And so, I have all these interviews. So now I got to figure out who to even release this week and all that kind of stuff.
One of the things I found when I started podcasting, especially, was my own particular quirks that I never realized I had until listening to playbacks as I'm editing or whatever else, and realizing, good God, I actually do that. Whether it's an or in my case, especially, was that I would turn around and constantly use the phrase "stuff of that nature." And that phrase was so bad in the beginning parts of my podcasting career that I literally told people you could have a drinking game with it and probably wind up shit-faced drunk at the end of it. Did you find that when you started doing yours, that you had like a tick or a catchphrase that you didn't intend that just naturally slipped out of your mouth as you were recording?
I find myself like when somebody's talking, and I'm trying to then transition when they stop and I want to transition it to another question, I'll be like, that's amazing. And I always just like, I feel like I almost have to write down transitions. It's just so I can like, because of the ones that come off the top of my head, it's always, that's amazing. Like sometimes now though, when I'm doing a podcast, I'll think in editing mode. So if I catch myself going, that's amazing, I'll just say something else.
Right.
I go, oh, I love that story. Like knowing now I'm just going to cut out that's amazing. You know what I mean? Or, sometimes like if I'm doing stuff, I'll stop and I'll subtly just repeat something or say it twice because I know I screwed it up, and then I can edit myself out. I make myself sound really good.
There you go. See, I haven't figured out that editing part yet. So all those stuff of that natures are in the shows, guys. If you need to get drunk on a Friday night, go hit season 2 of Breaking the Fourth Wall. I promise you'll be drunk by the end of the first episode. Yeah, you'll be drunk on water. That's how bad it is. No, but so yeah, I mean, as far as the podcasting is concerned, was it something that you were always intending to do, or was it something, like you said, because of COVID and all that it was just finally like, you know what, I need to get this, I need an outlet to get this out of me, my performance out of me. Let's go ahead and try this. Like what led you to the road of podcasting in general?
I wanted to just create something that kind of had my voice in it, and not my voice. I mean, my voice, not my voice. Well, I guess it's both, but I wanted to create something that kind of captured my humor, but was accessible to anyone, not people who came to the show or not. People are like, oh, you've got great timing. Oh, you've got a great, rhythm. I love hearing, so I wanted to create that. So it's like, that's why I do a bunch of stuff up front. It's only like 5 minutes. I don't do a lot. I realized right away, I don't want this to be about me. It's my show, but I don't want it to be about me, just enough. You know,
Right.
you just need a little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the end, have some fun with the guests in the middle, and then, you know, that's about it. I mean, I'm much lower key during the interview than I am in the beginning and the end, because I don't want to. I'm not trying to overpower my guest either. Like, the best compliment I got is from somebody who was like, "Hey, listen to Jeff's show. He actually lets them talk." You know what I mean? It's like some people like try to, like, I do the research so I know it, not so I can say it.
Right.
Right. So, you know, and I find some people are like, they want to go like, "Oh, Chris, yeah, I read that you started breaking the fourth wall because your parents were in the Himalayas," and they'll go on for 5 minutes. And then you, the guest, goes, "Yeah, that's right." Like, you know what? I would have rather heard you say it than the guest showing off that he did research. You know what I mean? It was like, I was interviewing Craig Shoemaker, and it was just it was kind of a conversation. When you talk to comedians, it's more conversation than it is an interview. And he has a very cool Laughter Heals organization. So he starts to talk about that, and he goes, "Did you even know I had that, Jeff?" I go, "Yeah, you found it in 2014. Go ahead, tell us all about it." You know, because I had it right there in my notes, you know, but it was just like, you know, it's just so you can kind of have the conversation and kind of go with it and kind of, you know, fill it in, or because sometimes they'll forget their own details, and you go, "When did I start that? 2014? Yeah." You know, you're like, just so you're there to more of assist than
Right.
than get it out. So that to me, I did, that was when we talked about podcasting. That part is the part that I didn't anticipate. I thought I would just go into the interviews, and I realized, oh my God, I find myself reading books now. I mean, like, if they wrote a book, I'll read the book. I
Right.
find myself watching movies. So a lot of time goes into just the 30 minutes I'm going to spend with that person, you know, just to make sure that is the best and they feel as good as they can.
Oh, you do have to do that. I interviewed Carl Gottlieb, who obviously connected with Jaws and all that, and he wrote a book called The Jaws Log. And I knew about the book, but I'd never read the book when I interviewed him. And the first thing he said to me is, "Well, did you read the book?" No. Yeah, you feel stupid afterwards. Like, no, I have it on order. It's coming, but I haven't read it yet. You know what I mean? And so you're right. You got to do so much research for people, even if you're never going to use the material that you researched in the interview, just so that way, like you said, you're prepared in that instance of like, yeah, I was in this movie. Can't remember the name of it. Oh, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yeah, that's the one. You know what I mean? Like you said. But I got to ask you, how the hell did you know my inspiration for starting Breaking the Fourth Wall? How did you know my parents were in the Himalayas and my father's glass eye fell out and my mother's jambalaya? And I said, you know what? Podcast.
It's on your Wikipedia page.
I have a Wikipedia page. That is awesome. Well, obviously you've been going strong. You obviously been doing it straight on. I'm curious about one particular thing though, especially with, like you mentioned, with the COVID, a lot of musicians and stand-up comedians and all that started doing the streaming sets, I guess you can call, for lack of a better term. Is this something that you thought about doing or have done, or is that something like you just kind of lose the element because you don't have the crowd physically in front of you?
I think the people that do it, God bless them. The people need to laugh. It's just not it wasn't my thing. So I just moved into this, and I wanted to be able to more control. Zoom, you can't control, right? It's the worst part about comedy to me is like you can't interact with the audience. So to me, I don't like that. So now podcasting's, you could say, oh, it's the same thing with podcasting, Jeff. Yes, but I'm very meticulously controlling that product. It's not randomly live and whatever I can get out correctly or not correctly at that time. It's very specifically, here's my product, and now I'm going to put it out into the world. And so I'm much more comfortable and happy to only do that moving forward. So,
Well, right on. No, I was just curious if that was something you did or
no,
how you thought about it. Overall, I
it's a
mean,
great question. It was a great question.
well, thank you.
That
Who's
was,
ego? Well, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know where they could find the Jeff Dwoskin podcasts and, you know, social medias. If they have any questions that I didn't ask or catch any of your shows, especially, do you have any shows coming up? Is there any word on when you can get back to being on stage?
I have no shows coming up. I was asked and I turned them down. I'm just not ready to go into clubs and breathe into other people's microphones. It's just where I'm at mentally. God bless anyone who wants to. It's just where I'm at. So I'm focused on the podcast. You can find the podcast at jeffdwoskinshow.com. If you can't spell Dwoskin, you can type in jeffisfunny.com, gets you to the same place. and then on Twitter and Instagram at Jeff Dwoskin Show. So at some point you're going to have to learn how to spell it if you want to keep up.
Or you can, it's all in the description. I promise it'll be
yeah,
there.
all right. And then Big Macher is my personal if you want to follow me there, which just go to the show notes. You're not going to spell that.
Well, Jeff, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here. I wish you nothing but continued success, and we'll have to have you back on maybe on the weekly show, which is our kind of our Seinfeld show, where we just sit around and do segments of funny stuff, like reading weird news podcast or news reports or whatever else, and some random topic of conversation. I think you'd fit right in with your comedy, especially because one of our co-hosts is another comedian, Mr. Don Smith.
Don Smith.
Don Smith. You don't know him? Yeah.
No, but that sounds amazing, and I would love to do that. It's been a pleasure breaking the fourth wall with you.
Yes, we broke the fourth wall. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode in any capacity, hit that thumbs up button. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Check out all the other great podcasts of Realm and Miss Entertainment. If you prefer them in audio-only format, just look up Realm and Miss Entertainment on Anchor.fm, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, or wherever quality podcasts can be heard. I definitely want to thank our sponsor, the Nurses Guild. You probably already got annoyed by their commercial. If you did, if you have family members who need at-home nursing care, please give them a call. They'll help you out. And of course, guys, thank you for joining me, and I will catch you on the next Breaking the Fourth Wall. Have a good night.